so that they keep the. It is so great to be here and see all of you. And, you know, this has become an annual August event where we have a joint COE meeting along with bringing our alumni together. It's also a delight to introduce our speaker today, Joe Murli. And Joe is, you know, kind of an important figure in the continuous improvement movement, and has, you know, is known as a leading thinker and somebody who has not only thought a lot, but also practiced a lot, and has just great experience to share with us. Joe started, like a lot of us did, I think, really focused on, you know, Kaizen and sort of rapid fire improvement, and was really sort of mesmerized by that until, you know, over time, you know, the importance of management systems and sustainability, and particularly the people elements, became more and more important. And that's what he's going to talk about with us today. And I'm really looking forward to that. Joe is the author of a popular book. He's the founder of the Murli Group, a successful consulting firm in lean management. And he's also on the faculty of the Lean Enterprise Institute. So can we welcome Joe?
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Peter. That was a wonderful introduction. So first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here. I'm amazed at what's going on in this class for the 7 years you've been around. And we talked a bit about the development of the field of lean in general. You know, one of the discussions was that healthcare is suddenly involved in a massive way. And recently I was at the Lean Healthcare Summit, and John Toussaint got up and spoke, and then I had a breakout session talking about transformation. And I just reflected on the whole healthcare movement and said, you know, I feel that healthcare has moved as far in the last 5 years as we in manufacturing took the first 15 years to get through, as we were feeling our way through this. So for those of you in the healthcare space, keep it up. We obviously need it. It's an industry in flux, and it's something that's vitally needed. And to see, you know, insurance companies represented here and other non-manufacturing entities represented here, to me, is particularly rewarding. From the beginning, we always felt like these principles applied. And today I'll tell you that more than 75% of the work that I do and that my group does is in totally non-manufacturing related space. So while I'm going to share with you some manufacturing experiences, because that's the foundation of my learning in the beginning, let's keep in mind that it's the principles that are important, and the industry is just the venue upon which we apply these principles, right? So let's get to it. So let's start with why. So why did I become so involved in thinking about researching and developing a lean management system? And I would encourage you to really focus in, if you have not already, as to the why you're doing what you're doing. Because when you start thinking about lean, what you're thinking about is fundamentally changing the way you think about running and operating a business, and the way those around you are going to operate the business. And if you're going to get somebody to change the way they think about something, you had better have your elevator speech in order. That's what I call the elevator speech, right? So you've got 2 floors in the elevator, and one of your colleagues is standing next to you and saying, so why? You better have an answer. And you know what? The answer better be clear, it better be concise, and really it better be consistent across the organization. All right? Otherwise, you're just not going to affect change. So let me share with you my why, and it's based on my experience. It's going to be a little bit more than 2 floors in the elevator, but it's really driven everything that I do in terms of lean. So Jim Womack wrote this book, Lean Thinking. So chapter 8, Jim titled The Acid Case. And, you know, if you've read the book, you know that in the beginning he talks about some lean fundamentals, the basic principles of lean. And then as the book progresses, he has these little mini case studies. And the intent of the book was not just to communicate basic lean principles, but also to point out that it wasn't just a car thing. Sitting in this room today, I'm not sure if we understand the relevance of that, but back then, when this book came out, we were all sort of scratching our heads in the manufacturing world over, does this really work in aerospace? Does this really work in custom manufacturing? Does this really work in other types of manufacturing besides mass manufacturing, specifically automobile manufacturing? And he intended to blow up that myth that it's not just a car thing. So Chapter 8 talks about this company that is so lethargic, so disconnected from its customer base, so out of touch with what the public really needs, that, boy, if this company could pull off a cultural transformation, virtually anybody can. And, of course, he's talking about my alma mater, Pratt & Whitney. Okay, so what I like to tell people is if you really want to know what the most difficult, expensive, adversarial, bloodiest possible lean transformation is, I can point out exactly every step you need to go through to do exactly that. Or we say, you know what, we learned a lot during those years, and not just from Pratt & Whitney, but many other transformations and what works and what doesn't. And you know, what have we learned? How do we do it differently? And how do we take advantage of that learning? So that's the background. So here's Kaizen number 1 for me. So this is in Rocky Hill, Connecticut, and we were manufacturing these things called inlet guide vanes. You don't even need to know what an inlet guide vane is. It's a part that ranges in size from about this big to this big. Maybe the more important things to know is that making one took about 2.4 miles of travel distance. So fork trucks and hand carried, that part traveled about 2.5 miles in production. It took about 2 months to make one. And in that 2 months, we actually accomplished about 10 to 12 hours worth of work. All right, so these are metrics that some of you may be familiar with. And oh, by the way, every single one of them had to be reworked 2 to 3 times. Okay, so I know you don't know much about the aerospace business possibly, but let me tell you, those are all bad numbers. Okay, those are all bad. And by the way, it took about anywhere between 6 to 10 people a day to keep up with customer demand. And you know, that in itself was kind of a head scratcher, like why does it take so many people and why is it so variable? So we went through this process and we said, okay, so we had some consultants come in, Japanese consultants, the Shingijutsu company, and after we visited Toyota and got some firsthand understanding what this lean stuff was all about, and we started to sort of set the stage for our first lean encounters. Now, I want to set the backstage here. The backstage is we were a company of 30,000 employees, and at this point, 18 months later, we only had 20,000 employees. So 10,000 people were let go. For the first time in the company's history, both military and commercial spending were down simultaneously. And basically, the bottom had fallen out of the aerospace industry. We weren't sure we'd still be in business a year from now. So out of all of this, the president at that time, Carl Kropik, says, hey, I'm going to invite in a group of executives from Toyota Motor Company to come visit and walk around and give us their opinions. And we're like, okay, why? And by the way, who's Toyota? This is like 1988. Okay, so Toyota was not the household word that it is today. And the Toyota production system was not on the tip of everybody's tongues at that point. So he said, well, you know, they really know some things about manufacturing, and I'm interested in having them come visit and giving us some feedback. And I want you to be part of the team that hosts them and shows them around and takes notes throughout. Okay. So they come, we pick them up at the airport, we bring them to the plant, we show them around. At night, we take them out to dinner. We ate lots of steak, we ate lots of raw fish. We took them to the casinos to gamble. We took them out to play golf. And all the time that we're walking through the facility, they're giving us these backhanded compliments like, my, you must be a very wealthy company to be able to afford all this empty space. And, you know, how nice of you to allow your employees to walk so much during the work process here, to give them exercise. And you know, they're giving us all these backhanded comments, always through an interpreter, you know, so you're always getting that. And then at the end, we brought them back to the airport, thanked them very much for their time. Like, thank God that's over. Carl, that was really interesting. You know, here's the debrief. Can we go back to work now? Because these people may know how to make some cars, but I don't even know what these cars are about. But they certainly don't know how to make a jet engine. They're like, well, he says, you know, I hope you were paying attention because we're going to adopt these principles. And I've just signed on with this consulting group, Shingijutsu, to come in and for the next 3 years and transform us into a company that does this everywhere. Like, okay, all right. Now, by the way, we just fired 10,000 people, right? So I don't want to be the 10,001st. So like, okay, thank you, Carl. Appreciate being part of this. Let's move on. So the first event comes along, and here we are talking about inlet guide vanes, and we're traveling around with the part, and they're pointing out that it takes 2.4 miles of travel to make one of these things. Like, well, yeah, but so what? Oh, by the way, you have enough inventory to, support your customer for the next year and a half. But yeah, you don't understand the aerospace business. This isn't cars. So they're telling us all these things that are really foreign to us at the time. But the bottom line is, we go through this process. And some of you might be familiar with this. We do a product family analysis. We do a spaghetti chart. We do a process capacity table. We do a cycle time, takt time bar chart, percentage load chart. We do a standard work combination sheet. We do a 3P mock-up of what the new cell is going to look like. We do a standard worksheet. We do a whole lot of hard work over a 5-day period. This absolutely was pick and shovel work, 5 long, long days. And we're getting taught all the time by this Japanese sensei, who's giving us his insights in the most indirect, vague manner possible, like sand the fence, paint the fence, and it was really feeling more like this, right? So this is kind of what I was going through, along with my Kaizen teammates. It was a total of 12 of us on the team for 5 solid days, and then at the end, it was like, phew, we're at closeout, Friday afternoon, closeout, and all the executive vice presidents are in there, like, wow, this must have been a big deal. And I knew we did a good job because there was chicken and pizza. There was chicken wings and pizza being served during the closeout. So that was always a sign of Pratt & Whitney. If you got the pizza and the chicken wings, that meant a good thing. If there was no food, it's like, let's get this over with. So we go through the closeout, and we found that we reduced the travel distance to the space of that cell from 2.4 miles. Wow, amazing. Productivity, well, it didn't take 6 to 10 people anymore. 4 people in the cell could more than keep up with customer demand. Wow, pretty impressive. Inventory, well, guess what? We only needed about 7 days of inventory, right? Not 14 months. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Quality, we actually demonstrated we could make one right the first time. At the end of 5 days, this is not easy stuff, right? This is a big deal. And then customer service, we actually demonstrated we could make them on demand. So we didn't have to make, a month's worth of these and a month's worth of those and then hope we had the right one in stock when a customer ordered it. We could basically make it to demand and deliver it within the lead time the customer wanted. This was breathtaking, right? This was transformational. We looked at this and said, oh my God. It was like injecting oxygen into the factory. We looked at this and said, oh my God, we could do this in 5 days. Now I have to tell you, as an engineer at Pratt & Whitney, to move the equipment easily would have taken me 6 months, easily. Actually, probably closer to a year under real life circumstances. And the reality is that at the end of the year, priorities would change and you would never move the equipment anyway. So if you really didn't want to do something, you just had to not push as hard on it, and eventually somebody would go somewhere else. The attentions would go somewhere else. To get this done in 5 days was amazing. So we looked at this and said, okay, let's put a plan together to transform Pratt & Whitney. So we have our Japanese sensei, and he's saying, do Kaizen. Well, yeah, but we have to do, this big global organization, not just this one department in Rocky Hill, do more Kaizen. Okay, so we put a plan together to do a Kaizen event every 2 weeks, someplace in Pratt & Whitney around the world for the next 3 years. And we start on this death march of Kaizens, collecting all sorts of frequent flyer miles, eating all kinds of chicken wings and pizza and whatever else the local fare was a sign of success. And time after time after time, we get to the Friday afternoon closeout, and we were always amazed at the level of improvement we made. We didn't believe it ourselves. Like, how could we have been so blind to not see this before? So we get about 3 months into this, and so, let me go back to Rocky Hill. I just want to go back and visit Kaizen 1, right? Go see what happens. I don't know if anybody's ever had this experience. How many people in this room have done a project, felt really good about the result, had the pizza and chicken wings to celebrate, and then you come back 3 months later and it's like, boy, I'm just not feeling it anymore. It's like, I don't understand. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you? Okay, a few hands have stayed down. The rest of you are honest. All right, everybody's had this experience from what I can tell. I do all these public workshops with LEI, and I ask the same question, and 90% of the hands go up over and over and over again. So, hey, Mr. Miyagi, how do I prevent this? Do more Kaizen. How long am I going to wax the car before I can go fight the fight, you know? Like develop Kaizen mind. So I'm not feeling it. I'm just not feeling the love here, right? So this isn't working. We got to find an alternative to this. And there's got to be more to this. I mean, from a technical standpoint, the results were phenomenal. But from a bottom line sustainability standpoint, we're just not getting it. Right? It just wasn't happening. And doing more Kaizen just meant we would do this faster too. Right? The tail end of it would come out faster. So that's the why. So we have this shop floor work cell. The results were totally, undeniable. You couldn't change that. That is what it is. But little by little, equipment would get pushed out of the way, inventory would creep back in, more people would creep back in, and processes would start to decay and move back to where they were before. So our first approach was, well, the operators really we didn't spend enough time with the operators to have them buy in. They don't own the process, Okay, so let's go down there and work with the operators some more so they can own the process. Okay, own the process? Yeah, I own the process now. Can you leave now, please? Yes, I own it. Will you please leave? I don't know. Can you own it? Yeah, okay, you own it. Well, it's still not sustaining. And then it's, well, the supervisors, damn it, they're getting paid to make sure that people do the job the way it's supposed to be done. We're an FAA-approved facility. You can't just make things any way you want. So supervisors, hey, you're not leading properly. You got to crack the whip when they're not following directions. Okay, so now the supervisors are starting to crack down. And by the way, we are in a very heavily unionized environment, right, in Connecticut, in an organization that just fired 10,000 people, and guess what? This is not the environment with which people are sort of hugging and singing Kumbaya, right? It's not this sort of, and we're saying, we're going to crack the whip on you, we're going to control this process even more deeply. Now all of a sudden, things are coming to a loggerhead. So we stand back and say, wait a minute, why is this stuff not working? Why is it not working? Well, Japan's different. Thank you. Thank you. Japan's different. Yeah. They're very respectful and hierarchical. When the boss says to do something, they just do it. They don't question it. Okay, well, we're not going to do that, right? That's not going to happen in the United States of America. We question everything, right? It's the way we're brought up. So does that mean we can't do lean? Maybe not, right? So this is a disempowering belief. So if that's really true, that that's required, right, that respect for hierarchy, then this approach isn't going to work in our society. We need something else. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper. Well, the Japanese, their culture, they subordinate themselves for the good of society more. We don't do that. Go drive down any highway and you know that, right? That's not the way we are. So maybe we can't do lean because we're just not going to be that way, right? Okay, that's a disempowering belief. So little by little, I start to spend more and more time in Japan, and I'm watching what's actually going on. I'm standing there in an assembly line, and something's going wrong, and they stop the line. Like, what the hell? How are you going to make cars? They stop the line. What's the matter with you people? So it turns out, the fender skirt doesn't bolt up inside the fender. The bolt holes aren't lining up, and they stop the line. And I'm like, go get a Phillips head screwdriver, line up the holes, and jam the bolt in there. Get on with it. How do you ever make a car? And they're sitting there, and they're talking about it, and they're talking about it, and it's in Japanese, and I don't understand it. So they're just going on and on. I'm like, how stupid could these people be? Don't they know they just have to line up the holes and shove the bolt in there and get the car out, deliver the damn car? And they would talk about it, and they would talk about it. Like, wow, something's going on here. So now my interpreter is starting to explain to me what these conversations are about, because I'm asking questions. Okay. They're trying to understand everything there is to know about this problem. What are the circumstances under which it happens? Does it happen on a certain day of the week? Does it happen when certain people are involved? Does it happen with certain suppliers? Does it happen under this circumstance? And they're grasping the situation. So I think everybody in this room has had some A3 background. So they're working the upper left-hand corner of the A3. They're just grasping the situation. Wow. Well, we're not going to do that. We just like to come up with the answer, right? Deliver the damn car. Just come up with the answer. Okay, but you know what? There's something here now. This is doable, right? Now we're peeling the onion back, and we're starting to get to the point where we're hitting what makes lean work in one environment and not another. We fully grasp the situation before jumping to a solution, and we put permanent solutions in place. Okay, I've heard about this. Never really experienced it. Okay. And then I start doing a little bit more research, and I start digging into the education system in Japan. And I discovered something. In grade school in Japan, teachers teach you things by asking questions. We might call this the Socratic method. The professional educators in the room might recognize it as a reflective learning process. Okay, well, you know what? If you're brought up that way, from grade school on up, to lead in a manner that involves asking questions to fully understand the situation is a very natural thing for you. I don't know about you, but when I went to the 4th grade, my teacher lectured. Not good, not bad, not better, not worse, but different. My teacher stood up and lectured on a topic, assigned some homework. You went home, did the homework, came back the next day, asked a few questions, talked about the homework, and then there was a test. If you pass the test, you go to the next grade. Repeat as necessary. Eventually, you go to college. Eventually, your parents get tired of paying tuition, or you've built up enough debt where you can't support it anymore, so you go to work. Okay, and guess what? When you go to work, a very similar phenomena happens. You get a test. The difference is the test at work is not a written exam. The test at work is you run into a problem. The fender doesn't line up, and your boss watches how you react. And if your boss sees that every time there's a little problem, you go run into his or her office and say, hey, I have a problem, what do you want me to do? They're like, okay, I got this person's number. Or if the boss sees, you know, so-and-so there, whatever problem he or she's running into, just seems to handle it. I think that person's ready for some more responsibility. You get more responsibility, you get raises. Guess what? More problems go away. Your boss is even happier now. You get more responsibility and more raises. Your boss is even happier now because your boss is looking better and better. And then suddenly your boss starts to say, well, where are my worst problems? I'm going to put Randy on my worst problems because I notice when I assign Randy something, that problem goes away. Same's true with Teresa over there. I'm going to put Teresa on that problem because I have this other issue over here. I got a little fire cropping up there. She's done a great job down at this department, so let me put her over there. All right, so this is what we call the whack-a-mole school of management, right? Find your best people, assign them to your worst problems, rinse and repeat as necessary, right? Okay, so let's understand something, that this issue of reflective learning, this issue of grasping the problem before jumping to a conclusion, is not a societal cultural difference. It's a learned behavior. It is something we can affect. This is doable. This is not a disempowering belief. However, we have to recognize that it's not a natural behavior. And the biggest problem we have in affecting sound, lean transformations is that the behavior we're asking you to change as leaders is exactly the behavior that made you successful to begin with. The behavior of making problems go away without a lot of fuss and getting the deliveries, getting the patient out the door, getting the underwriting done on an insurance policy, getting the widget out the door, and just making it happen is what made you successful. And now we're not asking you to stop being that successful in that way, but we're asking you to back up and say, you know what? You can't be the person with the answer all the time. If you want to be a lean leader, you have to now become a coach whose responsibility it is to build the problem-solving muscle of your subordinates. That's a fundamental behavior change in most leadership in most American companies. So that's the crux of it. That's the crux of it. And we discovered something here. And by the way, for the first 3 years, I was totally oblivious to this. Most of Pratt & Whitney was totally oblivious to this. Yeah, we created this U-shaped cell, and I think it's kind of iconic that all of these tiers are shaped like U-shaped cells. And we demonstrated all this technical success, you know, vast productivity improvement, vast quality improvement, vast customer service improvement, pizza and chicken wings every week. It doesn't get better than this. What we missed was these people were formerly separated by 2.4 miles of distance and a year's worth of inventory. If something was going wrong, most of you wouldn't even know it unless somebody came to tell you. Suddenly, by putting you all in the same place at the same time and watching a piece of raw material turn into a delivered inlet guide vane, created the potential for you to become a team. And the problem is we never saw that. The problem is we never led you that way. but we expected that kind of result. Suddenly, when something comes to a stop, you can all see it at the same time. You can see it as a team, know it as a team, and learn it as a team. You couldn't do that before. And we as leaders didn't even have the beginning understanding of how to manage you differently and how to lead you differently in this environment. Right? So this is really what we're after. Right? The fundamental thing that makes Lean Lean, it's a team-based collaborative problem-solving model. And the physical changes in whatever industry you're in, yes, you're going to get some industrial engineering related benefit out of it, but the big benefit, the rest of the iceberg that's below the ocean, is you're unlocking the potential of your workforce. So here's the goal. How did we do yesterday? Where's the waste? How can we do it better today? Everybody, every day, everywhere. New product introduction, the sales and marketing process, the operations, the fulfillment process, across the entire organization with your customer out the other end. How do we align our people so they continually become better and better and better at this over time and not backslide like the pictures I showed you at the beginning?
All right. Well, let's give Joe a big...
Thank you very much.
I'm Robin Razor Thompson. I'm the Administrative Director for the COE. Do you notice how I get no one to introduce me? All right. Just saying. So, again, shamelessly promoting, we have Joe's book. If anyone is interested in purchasing it afterwards, Joe will be out front with them. And we've got a Square. It'll take a credit card. So if you're interested in doing that, Joe will be out there. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. And have a good weekend.